In the small town of Ipetu, life was not easy for Adunni. She had no family, no friends, and no one to care for her. Every day, she walked through the town, looking for any work she could find. Some days, she washed clothes for people. Other days, she swept compounds or fetched water from the stream. No job was too small for her. But the people of Ipetu barely noticed her. To them, she was just the poor dirty girl who did menial jobs. They would toss her a few coins and send her away without a second thought. Adunni was used to it. She had lived this way for as long as she could remember. One evening, as the sun was setting over Ipetu, Adunni balanced a bucket of clothes on her head as she walked down the narrow, dusty road leading home. Her legs ached and her stomach rumbled. She had spent the whole day washing clothes and sweeping compounds for a few coins. As she neared her small mud house, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw a tall man dressed in fine clothes. His dark skin glowed under the fading sunlight, and the gold wristwatch on his wrist shined beautifully. He didn't look like someone from Ipetu. "Good evening," the man said, smiling. Adunni hesitated. Rich people never spoke to her. "Good evening, sir," she replied, lowering her eyes. She reached into his pocket and brought out crisp naira notes. "Take this," he said, handing them to her. Adunni's heart pounded. "Why?" she asked, staring at the money in disbelief. "There is more where that came from," the man said smoothly. "All I need from you are used panties. Any panties from any woman." Adunni's eyes wandered in shock. "Used panties? Why would he need that?" "If you do this," the man continued, "you'll never be poor again." Adunni swallowed hard, staring at the money in his hands. This was not an ordinary business, but should she do it? Adunni's fingers trembled as she collected the money from the stranger. The notes were crisp, fresh, and plenty, more than she had ever held in her life. Her heart pounded. "Think about it," the man said, slipping his hands into his pockets. "I'll be back in 3 days." Then he walked away, disappearing into the night. Adunni stood there, gripping the money tightly. Used panties? What could he possibly want with them? The thought made her uneasy, but as she stepped into her small empty house, her stomach rumbled loudly. She had not eaten all day. She lit a small lantern and stared at the money again. This was more than she made in a whole month. If she could keep getting money like this, she wouldn't have to struggle anymore. No more washing clothes in the cold stream. No more fetching heavy buckets of water. No more hunger. But how could she collect used panties without making people suspicious? No one would just hand them over. She needed a clever plan. The next morning, she went to the market. She used part of the money to buy beautiful beads, colorful scarves, and fine wrappers. She knew women loved pretty things. A smile formed on her lips. She has found a way. The next morning, Adunni set up a small stand near the village square. She neatly arranged the colorful beads, scarf, and wrappers she had bought. The bright colors shined beautifully under the sun, catching the eyes of passing women. Soon, a group of women gathered around her stand. "Adunni, when did you start selling this?" an elderly woman, Mama Folake, asked, touching a beaded necklace. Adunni smiled sweetly. "I'm not selling them, Mama. I am trading them." "Trading?" another woman, Shadi, asked curiously. "Yes," Adunni said excitedly. "Bring any old clothes or underwear you no longer need, and I will give you something new in exchange." The women looked at one another. "That sounds fair," Shadi said. "I have some old clothes at home." "Me too," Mama Folake added. One by one, the women promised to bring their old garments the next day. Adunni felt a thrill of excitement. Her plan was working. By evening, she had collected her first set of used panties. She placed them carefully in a bag, her heart racing. Now, She only had to meet the stranger again. Night fell over Ipetu, and the village became quiet. Adunni held the small bag of used panties tightly as she walked towards the lonely footpath where she had first met the stranger. Her heart pounded in her chest. What if this was a trap? What if somebody had seen her? She shivered, but the thought of the money pushed her forward. Few minutes later, she heard footsteps. The stranger emerged from the darkness, dressed in fine clothes as before. He smiled when he saw her. "You came," he said smoothly. Adunni nodded and stretched out the bag. "Here," she whispered. The man took the bag, opened it slightly, and peered inside. A pleased smile spread across his face. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a bundle of script naira notes. "You did well." Adunni's hands shook as she took the money. It was even more than before. "I need more," the stranger said, slipping the bag under his robe. "Keep them coming, and you will live like a queen." Adunni's heart raced as she held the money. A queen? Was it possible? She watched as the stranger disappeared into the night. For the first time in her life, she felt powerful. The next morning, Adunni woke up feeling different. The small mud walled house that she lived in for years suddenly felt too small, too poor for her new dreams. She counted the money again, more than she had ever seen in her life. A wide smile spread across her face. With her new riches, she went to the market, but this time she did not buy beads nor scarf. She bought new clothes for herself, fine wrappers, golden earrings, and even a pair of shining slippers. The market women who once ignored her now greeted her warmly. "Adunni, you are glowing," one of them said. Another woman, Iyariti, stared at her suspiciously. "Where did you get money for all this?" Adunni laughed lightly. "Business is good." She knew she had to be careful. Too many questions would bring trouble. As she walked through the village, heads turned. The once poor girl who washed clothes and fetched water was suddenly dressed like a rich woman. Even men who never noticed her before started greeting her with smiles. But Adini knew she had to keep walking. The stranger wanted more, and she was ready to give him whatever he needed. After all, this was just the beginning. Days passed, and Aduni's business continued to grow. More women came to trade their old clothes and underwear for her fine beads and scarf. Some even brought extra items, hoping to get more beautiful things in return. "You are too kind, Aduni," one of them said. "Who would have thought you had such a generous heart?" Aduni only smiled, but deep inside, she felt a strange excitement. The more panties she collected, the richer she became. Every few nights, she met with the stranger at their usual spots. Each time, he took the bag of used panties and handed her a bundle of money. He never explained what he did with them, and Aduni never asked. One night, after their exchange, the stranger looked at her closely. "You are doing well," he said, "but I need more. The demand is growing." Aduni swallowed. "More?" "Yes," the stranger said. "Much more. Find a way." Aduni nodded, though her mind raced. She needed a new plan. She has tricked the women so far, but how would she get even more without making them suspicious? She had to be smart. Aduni knew she had to act fast. The women in the village had already given her most of her old clothes and underwears. If she kept asking for more, they might start suspecting something. One evening, as she sat outside her house, an idea struck her. The young girls in the village, unlike the older women, they had little money to buy fine things, but they loved fashion, especially beautiful scarves and bracelets. The next morning, she visited the village stream, where the young girls usually gathered to wash their clothes. She carried a small basket filled with the finest beads and scarves she could find. "My sisters," she called out sweetly, "I have brought a special offer just for you." The girls turned eagerly. "What is it?" one of them for me asked. I'm giving out these fine scarves and beads for free, Adunni said smiling, but only those who bring me their nightwear or underwear. Just something small. It's a simple trade. The girls giggled. That's easy. By the time Adunni left the string, her bag was full again. Her plan had worked. She was getting richer, but she didn't know that someone was watching her. Adunni's wealth continued to grow, and so did the whispers in the village. People noticed how she no longer did menial jobs. She wore fine clothes, ate good food, and even brought a new mat and cooking pot. How did Adunni suddenly become rich? Mama Risi asked one evening as she pounded yam with her neighbors. Maybe she found a secret treasure, another woman joked, but not everyone laughed. A certain woman, Iyagbenro, had been watching Adunni closely. One afternoon, as Adunni walked through the market, Iyagbenro stops her. Adunni, she called. Adunni turned, her heart skipping a bit. Yes, Mama, she asked, forcing a smile. I've been watching you, Iyagbenro said. One day you were struggling to eat. The next day you are richer than all of us. Adunni's palms became sweaty. Mama, I started a trading business, she stammered. Iyagbenro folded her arms. What kind of trading? Adunni swallowed. Scarves and beads, she said quickly. Iyagbenro stared at her for a long moment before nodding slowly. Hmm. Be careful, my child. Not all riches come from good places. Adunni forced a laugh, but deep inside, she felt uneasy. She tried to act normal, but Iyagberu's words hurted her. Was she being too careless? Did someone already suspect her? She decided to be more careful. From now on, she would only collect a few items at a time to avoid suspicion. But unknown to her, someone had already noticed her strange activities. Her neighbor, Tunde. Tunde lived in a small mud hut next to hers. He was a quiet man, but he observed everything. He had seen Adunni struggling with life, and now, suddenly, she was rich. What troubled him the most was the way she moved at night. One evening, he sat outside, pretending to mend his slippers, while secretly watching Adunni. As expected, just before midnight, she sneaked out, carrying a small bag. Tunde's heart pounded. Where is she going at this hour? Silently, he followed her through the dark footpaths, past the quiet house, and towards the lonely bush paths. He walked at a safe distance. Then he saw her stop under a tree. A man appeared. The two exchanged something, Adunni's bag for money. Tunde's eyes widened. Something was very wrong. He had to find out the truth. Tunde's heart pounded as he hid behind the tree, watching the exchange. He couldn't see the stranger's face clearly, but he noticed how Adunni held the money tightly, her eyes filled with greed. The stranger whispered something to her, and she nodded before turning to leave. Tunde quickly stepped back into the shadows as she passed by, unaware that someone had seen everything. As soon as she disappeared, Tunde let out a shaky breath. What is Adunni doing? Why is she meeting a strange man at night? The next morning, Tunde couldn't focus on anything else. He kept thinking about what he had seen. He knew he needed proof before telling anyone. That night, he decided to follow her again. This time, he crept even closer. He listened carefully as the stranger handed her a bag of money. You are doing well, the man said in a low voice, but I need more. More panties, and quickly. 2 days' blood ran cold. Panties? His stomach turned. Adunni was trading people's underwear for money. He had to warn the village before it was too late. But how? Tunde could barely sleep that night. His mind raced with questions. Why did the stranger want people's panties? What was he doing with them? By morning, he knew one thing. He had to tell someone. But who would believe him? If he accused Adunni without proof, she could deny everything and turn the village against him. He had to be smart. That afternoon, he went to see Iyagbenru. The elderly woman who has been suspicious of Adunni. Yeah, I need to talk to you, he said in a low voice. She eyed him carefully. What is it, my son? It's about Adunni. Iyagbenru's face tightened. I knew something was wrong. Tell me everything. Tunde hesitated, then whispered, I followed her last night. She's selling used panties to a strange man in the bush. Iyagbenru gasped. Used panties? That is bad medicine. Who knows what evil they are doing with them? We need to stop her, Tunde said firmly. Iyagbenru nodded. We must gather the elders. This must not continue. But neither of them knew that Adunni was already growing suspicious, and she was willing to do anything to keep her secret safe. Adunni could feel it in her bones. Something was wrong. At the market, she noticed how Iyagbenru and Tunde spoke in hushed tones. The way Iyagbenru's eyes looked towards her made her skin crawl. Had someone found out? That night, she sat in her hut, thinking, I have been careful. I have not told anyone. So why do I feel uneasy? She decided to test Tunde. The next morning, she greeted him with a bright smile. Good morning, my neighbor, she said sweetly. Tunde hesitated before replying, Good morning, Adunni. His voice was stiff. Adunni's heart pounded. He knows something. She leaned closer. Tunde, I've noticed you've been watching me. Why? Tunde forced a laugh. Me? Watching you? Adunni, you're imagining things. But Adunni was not convinced. That night, she changed her meeting location. Instead of going to the usual place, she sent a small boy to deliver the package to the stranger. If someone was following her, they would be confused. But what she didn't know was that Iyagbenru had already called a secret meeting with the village elders, and they were planning something she would never expect. By the next morning, whispers in the village had grown louder. Iyagbenru had spoken to the elders, and they all agreed Adunni selling wealth was suspicious. This kind of money does not come from honest work. Baba Akin, the oldest elder, said, we must find out the truth. We cannot accuse her without proof, another elder added. Iyagbenru nodded. We need to catch her in the act. After much discussion, they came up with a plan. That night, Tunde and two strong young men from the village would hide on near Adunni's usual meeting place. If she showed up, they would follow her and see what she was truly up to. Meanwhile, Adunni remained in her hut, feeling uneasy. She had sent a boy to deliver the package to the stranger instead of going herself. But was that enough? As she counted her money, she thought, maybe it's time to leave this village and start afresh somewhere else. But it was already too late. The trap had been set, and the villagers were waiting. Very soon, her secret will be exposed for all to see. Night fell, and the village was silent. But in the shadows near Adunni's usual meeting place, Tunde and two young men, Shei and Kunle, crouched, waiting. Tunde's heart pounded. If Adunni didn't come, their plan would fail. Minutes passed, then soft footsteps. Adunni appeared, carrying a small bundle. She looked around cautiously before standing under a tree. Moments later, a tall hooded figure emerged from the darkness. Tunde heard his breath as the stranger spoke. You changed the plan, the man said in low voice. I had to, Adunni whispered. I think someone is watching me. The man chuckled. You are smart, but I need more. The demand is high. Adunni hesitated. It's getting risky. People are asking questions. Then disappear, the man said coldly. Take your money and leave before they catch you. Tunde signaled Shei and Kule. Now! They leaped out. Stop right there. Adunni screamed, dropping her bundles of stolen underwear. The stranger turned to run, but Kunle tackled him to the ground. The villagers had finally caught them. Now the whole truth would come out. Adunni struggled, her heart racing, as Shei and Kule held her arms tightly. The stranger, now pinned to the ground, grunted in pain. Let me go, Adunni screamed. You don't understand. Tunde stepped forward, his voice firm. Oh, we understand very well. You've been stealing the villagers' underwear and selling them to this man. Shouts echoed through the night as more villagers arrived, drawn by the commotion. Iyagbero pushed through the crowd, her face filled with anger. Oh my God, I knew it. I knew something was not right, shouted. Baba Aki stepped closer and demanded, Who is this man? Kunle yacked off the stranger's hood, revealing a bald-headed man with piercing eyes. My name is Chief Kolakpo, he spat, and you fools have no idea what you've just done. The crowd murmured in shock. Chief? A rich man? Iyagberu's voice shook with anger. Why did you need use panties? What evil are you doing with them? You wouldn't understand, Chief Kolakbo said. But the villagers understood enough. This was no ordinary business. It was something dark. The villagers murmured among themselves, their faces filled with fear and confusion. Why would a rich man like Chief Kolakbo need use panties? Iyagbero stepped forward, her hands trembling. Tell us, Chief Kolapo, what do you do with them? The man giggled. Since you are so eager to know, I will tell you. Adunni's breath caught in her throat. No, he can't tell them. But Chief Kolapo had nothing to lose now. He looked around at the fighting villagers and said in low, cold voice, These panties are used for rituals. A collective shout flowed through the crowd. Yes, he continued, with them, I make money, big money, wealth beyond imagination. The owners of these panties, their destinies, their luck, their future gone, given to me instead. A woman in the crowd screamed. Another held her wrapper tightly, stepping back as if she might faint. Tunde's fist tightened. You mean you have been stealing people's destinies, their blessings? Chief Kolakpo nodded. And Adunni was my best supplier. All eyes turned to Adunni. Tears rolled down her cheeks. You did what? A woman shouted. You sold our blessings for money? Another one cried. The anger in the air was thick. Women held their wrappers. Men shook their heads in disgust, and children clung to their mothers, sensing the danger. Iyagbenru's voice trembled with rage. Adunni, you have destroyed life. Do you know how many people have been struggling, not knowing their luck was stolen? Adunni fell to her knees, sobbing. I didn't know it was this bad. You were just greedy. Tunde snapped. We were all struggling, but we didn't sell our own people to a ritualist. Chief Kolafo, unbothered by the tension, spare me the drama. She is not the only one who has done this. Many others work for men like me. His words only fueled the villagers' anger. Take them to the ballet, Baba Akin ordered. The crowd marched forward, grabbing Adunni and Chief Kolakbo. The villagers dragged Adunni and Chief Kolakbo to the palace of the ballet, the traditional ruler of the town. The air was tense, filled with anger and disbelief. Torches flashed as voices shouted accusations. Ballet, this woman has sold our destiny, Baba Akin cried. She worked with a ritualist, Iyagbenru added. The ballet, an old but powerful man, sat on his wooden throne, his face unreadable. He raised a hand and silence fell. Adunni, he said, his voice deep and commanding. Is this true? Adunni knelt, trembling. Vale, I was desperate. I had nothing. I didn't know. Enough! The ballet's voice thundered. You knew what we were doing when you traded our daughter's underwear for riches? The villagers murmured angrily. The ballet turned to Chief Kolapo. And you, Agbaya, how many destinies have you stolen? Enough to make me rich, Chief Kolapo said. The ballet's eyes burned with anger. You will both face the punishment for your wickedness. Adunni's heart pounded. Her wealth was gone. Now her fate was in the hands of the village. The sun had barely risen when the villagers gathered at the palace to witness the final judgment of Adunni and Chief Kolapo. Before their punishment was carried out, the village priest stepped forward, raising his staff. We must first seek restoration for the women whose destiny was stolen, he declared. The villagers murmured in agreement. Many of the women who had unknowingly given away their panties had been struggling with misfortunes, sudden sickness, loss of business, and endless bad luck. The priest played a calabash with sacred water before the ballet. The gods demand a cleansing ritual. Those affected must step forward. One by one, the women came forward. Some were weak, their faces pale from suffering. Others were in tears, realizing the truth behind their misfortunes. The priest began chanting, dipping leaves into the water and sprinkling it on them. Let the stolen blessings be returned. Let the curses be broken, he cried. A strong wind blew through the village, rustling the trees. The women shivered as an unseen force seemed to lift from their shoulders. Then one woman shouted, I feel lighter. Another held her chest. My headache, it's gone. A final woman who has been struggling to conceive fell to her knees. I feel something, like a new life inside me, she whispered. The villagers shared. The gods has restored their people. Now it was time for judgment. The ballet stood. Adunni, Chief Kolapo, you've done great evil. The gods have had mercy on the innocent, but for you, there will be no mercy. He struck his staff on the ground. By sunrise, you must leave this village forever. Let no one give you food, shelter, or help. The crowd parted as Adunni and Chief Kolapo were led to the village outskirts. Adunni's lips trembled. Please, someone, help me. No one spoke. Chief Kolapo turned and walked away. Adunni hesitated, taking one look at the village, the home she had betrayed. Then, with heavy steps, she walked into the unknown. The villagers watched until she disappeared. That day, the village learned a great lesson. Greed and betrayal will always be punished, but justice and truth will always prevail.